G'day and welcome to Deep and Meaningfuls with Furzey. On this episode of the pod, I'm chatting with Haseeb Ibrahim. So on Instagram, I follow a bit of parenting content. He's the guy who does the should you let your kids watch this show, figuring out whether or not this show is healthy for your child's mind. Is it too overstimulating? Is the content good for them? When I reached out to him to come on the podcast, he said yes. And then since that time, his account has really blown up. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you, Haseeb. Majority of what we talk about is the nature of learning. Human beings don't just learn all in the same manner. Just because a person isn't retaining certain information, that could be because of the manner in which they are being taught, not because they're incapable of learning that information. We talk about the traditional schooling system, the flaws that system has, because we got to face it, there are a lot. We talk about homeschooling. Haseeb homeschools his 3 kids. We talk about the benefits and we talk about the downsides, what the reality of that really is. So there's some stuff in this pod that may piss some people off because there are a lot of questions that come up about whether or not what we're doing is best for our children. And that's what we all want. We want what's best for our children. So if you're a parent or you're thinking about becoming a parent, I think you're going to get a lot out of this episode and it's definitely worth listening to. So here is Haseeb Ibrahim. I don't know how I came across you on Instagram, man, but I found you and I was like, this is good stuff. And it wasn't, and you had about the same amount of followers as me. And I was like, oh, this is going to take off. And it has. It really has, man. You're posting some great stuff. Obviously, it's really valuable, and people are seeing the value in it. Firstly, good on you for doing it, and secondly, how's it all going? How did you come about this?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a long story. I've got a bit of an unusual background. The way I've come to where I am now. And it sort of really began, I think it really began for me when I was 19 years old and I started an events company because I was a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
So I really understood from an early point how you could control the way people felt and behaved just from, the music you were playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, any good DJ, that's the whole point. That's all you really have control over. You're not writing or anything original. You are picking the soundtrack and how it makes people feel.
Exactly. So it's kind of like crowd manipulation.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is, man. That's what they come for.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tension and release, baby. Yeah. Yeah.
So I really understood the power of that from an early point. And then as I progressed through different areas in my entrepreneurial journey, I found my way to hardware tech startups somehow. And I was involved in LED technology. And this was way before it was commonplace. Because I think it was only like 2007 or something that the blue LED was created, whereas the red and green had been around for a while. And that's where you saw this massive surge in LED lighting as a more, efficient way of lighting up streets and whatnot. And we moved over from these kind of halogen and all of these old style bulbs.
So that's light emitting diodes, right? There's no heat.
Yes.
It's just light. So that's why people dig them, because you don't have to get cooked when you stand in front of it.
Yeah.
Amongst other benefits.
Basically, the blue LED was a revolution because it gave the LED industry the full spectrum of light. Now you've got red, blue, green. And so we were creating products with that at the time, and we built a few different things. We built this LED Etch-a-Sketch. We built this changeable LED sign. And then we eventually built this changeable LED badge that you could create. So I'd been involved in research and development projects for a while at this point, because that's what hardware tech startups are. They're just R&D for years and years and years until you finally launch something.
Sure.
And through that process, another company who were using LEDs for something completely radical, they approached me, and they were using it to tune people's brainwaves.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it turns out if you flash light at a certain frequency, you can encourage the brain into that frequency. So, for example, a relaxed state is an alpha state. You've probably heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Alpha waves.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're flashing an alpha wave frequency with light into someone's eyes, but their eyes are closed, but they can still kind of see the light flashing, it encourages their mind into an alpha state. Now, I had experience with this with binaural beats.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, so that's that. Well, you explain it. Binaural beats.
Yes. Yeah, so binaural beats is simply playing one frequency in one ear, one frequency in another ear, and the difference. So it's like 100, 110, and the difference is 10 hertz, and it creates this sort of fluttering,
it's like a beat
sound-like
almost.
effect. Yeah, like a rhythm. And, if you're in a relaxed state, your eyes are closed, you're sort of tuning into this frequency, the audio will encourage you into that frequency. Mm-hmm. So I knew it worked and it was really effective, but I had no idea you could do it with light. And actually, this technology has been around for a while, because as I was researching it, I discovered that, actually there's products that were made in the 90s that could do this stuff, but they weren't getting any publicity. I think people thought it was a fad. There wasn't any major research going on, but there is now. There is now. They're genuinely using it to slow down Alzheimer's and help with autism. Because flashing these frequencies, it starts to activate parts of the mind.
Wow. And so how obvious does that need to be? Do you need to know, this is something flashing in front of me, or can it be happening without you even knowing?
So the more immersive the experience is, the more effective it is. So we literally had, we hollowed out our VR goggles and put the lights all the way inside it to make it as immersive as possible. But yeah, I guess you could say, maybe there was some shady experiments going on in the past where were the CIA using it to mind control people or something like that? I don't know. The history is sketchy, but this.
You don't have to dance around it. Of course they were, man. Of course they were. You hear about all this stuff with what was it, MK Ultra, and who knows how true this is. But when you learn about with what they were doing with psychedelics, like with acid, and they were just super dosing people with acid, LSD, just to see what would happen to them, to try and use it as a truth serum kind of thing, to see if they could get answers out of them, and just like loading people up with stuff. So man, light, I'm sure they've got no problems blasting some light in someone's face.
Yeah, I think they were doing a combination of both, actually.
Probably.
One of the really interesting things that happens when you're having this light therapy is there's these tiny gaps in between when the light's on and off. And because it's not a big enough gap, there's when it turns off in your eyes, it feels like the light fades away and then fades back again. But what your mind does is it uses those gaps to create geometric patterns with the light fade. So you start to see very similar things that people describe seeing on psychedelics.
Wow. And
you're completely sober.
Wow,
And you
man.
don't have to have any experience, with meditation or anything like this. People that have never touched drugs in their life are sitting down having one of these sessions, and within a minute they're seeing these
Geometry.
sacred geometry.
Because the times I mean, I bang on about psychedelics all the time on this podcast, but from my experience with psychedelics, the geometry that I've seen is I don't understand it. I don't understand where it comes from. I don't understand why you see geometry. But man, it is the most beautiful, complex kaleidoscope that you could ever. Have you ever done any psychedelics?
Yes, I have. Yeah,
Did you see geometry?
yes.
Yeah. Isn't it fascinating? Like, why is it, why geometry? I understand maybe beautiful images, but it's like, it's perfect and it's so much more complex than you could ever describe and it moves, but it's geometric, no doubt about it.
It's like the building blocks of the universe.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I see it in my arm, and I see it in the sky, and it's almost, it feels like you're kind of, this is what everything's made from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Flower of life.
Flower of life. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're working on these mind control goggles, right? Right. So it's light therapy.
Light therapy. So we are doing a combination of light and sound together.
Okay.
So I've had the audio production background. I'm doing it with the light, and we're creating like the most immersive brain therapy program you could possibly create. And
so you got binaural beats, you got the light therapy going on.
Yeah, and we've synced them. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was producing pretty astonishing results. Like, now I was really into meditation at the time as well. So I was like meditating normally, and we were like running experiments with an EEG reader, and I was doing normal meditation, and then I was doing a meditation with the therapy goggles on, and the relaxed state was just so much more optimal with the goggles on, which was the craziest thing for me, because I thought the optimal state for relaxation was silence and darkness. And here I am getting a strobe flashed in my face.
Getting blasted. Yeah. Two of your senses getting blasted, relaxed. If only you could do it in a sensory deprivation tank as well. Then you'd have three senses.
Yeah, I've thought about that.
Yeah. You could play it in through the water and have the light kind of blasting in underneath. You'd be like, oh!
Maybe need to ask the CIA about that one.
Yeah. You can guarantee they've done it, yeah.
They've probably done it, yeah.
So was it observably more relaxing for you? Or did you only really notice when you saw the results from the EEG?
Yeah, I would say it was more observably relaxing, and it was especially good for, I think, for people who are easily distracted, who find meditation really challenging.
Yeah.
They find it hard to focus, hard to think of nothing. It just like forces you into that state.
Wow.
Because it's so like intrusive, a light flashing, sound being played. It's hard to think of anything else.
Sure. Okay. You've been quite bombarded, so you're very present.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So where did you go with this?
So we built a couple prototypes, and then my COVID happened, lockdown happened. We had no childcare. I was going through a lot of hard stuff in my other business, and I had to walk away from that project and then focus on my kids. And I was homeschooling my kids because we kind of had to. But my wife at the time, she wanted to homeschool, and I didn't want to homeschool. because I thought, school was cool. That's what everyone did. But when COVID happened, we sort of forced into homeschooling, and then I had I had some time to look at this homeschooling thing, because I thought, right, if we're going to do it, let's do it proper. And I started to read about it, and that's when I uncovered that actually school is this school. School isn't just the matrix. School is where people plug into the matrix.
Yeah.
And I thought I thought I'd done my research on. I thought I knew every conspiracy theory there was to know at this point. But so that one was a mind blown moment, because
it's almost
I kind of knew there was something wrong with school, but I didn't know to the extent how much it was really harming children's development and families. And then I became sort of a bit radicalized in my views about it. And I started to talk to other people about it. And I started to talk to other entrepreneurs about it. And I noticed that because the big part of homeschooling is self-directed learning.
Yes.
It's giving your child the ability to direct their own learning, autonomy, independence. And we just don't nurture that at school. It's just told what to do.
Well, and even if a teacher wanted to, they just don't really. It's not set up in order to do that. How can they? Because they've got X amount of other kids to try and take care of. They may have the best of intentions, but they just
absolutely. And a lot of them do go into to school with the best of intentions, and they're just tied up by the bureaucracy.
Yeah, they're doing the best that they can within a flawed and broken system.
That's it. And then they end up just no option but to just kind of bend to the will of that, and it changes them, and they feel helpless a little bit. And actually, when you look into the homeschooling communities all around the world, the top profession amongst homeschoolers is ex-school teacher.
Right. Seen the light and have decided that's a telling stat.
Massively.
Yeah.
Massively. Yeah.
So okay. So I have a daughter. She's 2.5, and I don't know what we're going to do. My wife and I have had quite a few discussions, and I've listened to a bunch of podcasts and done as much personal learning about the school system and homeschooling. And I have to say, I am really skeptical of the schooling system. That even for me personally, this is the standard school system. And that even has come from my personal experience with school. I went to a private school. It was a great school. My folks spent a lot of money to send me there. Had awesome facilities, all that good private school stuff. And I guess I just came out of, I remember doing, here in Australia, we do kindergarten to grade 12. So high school is 7 to 12. Is it the same in the UK? Is that?
We have like 5 till we have a primary school. Yeah, similar. And then 12 to set the high school. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're allowed to leave school after year 10. You can get your school certificate at year 10, or you do year 11 and 12 and get your higher school certificate in New South Wales, where I went to school, at least. And I remember at the time, the hardest thing I've ever done was stay in school. I just didn't want to be there. It just felt so wrong, me being there. It didn't serve me as a creative person. The people that I was around, what I wanted to do with my life in comparison with what I was having to spend my time doing. I remember having to do maths. My brain does not work well with numbers. And in high school, as an elective, we had to choose to do maths, some elective, right? There was a certain type of maths that we had to do. And I was in the lowest level. And I remember one time I'm sitting in there in class with all these other kids who we're just not mathematical kids. It's just not how our minds work, And all of us basically were, I feel sorry for him, Mr. Casbier. If you're listening, brother, I feel sorry for you, man. I apologize. But we were basically all going after Kaz, saying to him, why do we have to learn this? And the poor bastard spent the whole lesson basically just trying to like fend us off. And he eventually got to the point of, he stopped arguing for why we'd have to learn it and just said, it's about your ability to learn. That's what we're testing here. And that was the only thing he could come back to. And we were like, it's not a very compelling argument for all of us, 17, 18-year-old kids that hate maths, So that's just a mini example of my experience with school. And there's a lot of trauma that I have around high school. I'm 38, and I have dreams now to this day, every now and then, of me not being prepared for my exams and being so stressed out about it.
Yeah.
It still haunts me.
Do you know, that's the thing with the private school is, you get great facilities, but it's kind of like school on steroids. It's like with higher stakes. Yeah, with smarter kids, higher stakes, like people, harder competition, more achieving, achieve more. We expect more from you as well.
Yeah. I remember one of my mates, he was one of my best mates in school. He was probably the smartest kid definitely in my year, would constantly just top everything. And he was such a high achiever. And I was like, man, he's so good at school. I'm shit. I mustn't be a good person, and I'm not an idiot. Like I just didn't, I was like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And he did so well. And then I remember he had a psychotic episode after school. He had like a bit of a breakdown when he was in uni because it was just too much pressure. And I remember thinking, hang on, he was crushing it. He was doing so well. He was winning. And it's too much for him. But I thought I was meant to be the one who's the loser. I thought I was meant to be the one who couldn't handle it because I wasn't winning. I was getting a C at the best, Yeah. So I personally have always had a lot of critical questions when it comes to the schooling system and have definitely done more than dip my toes into try and learn about homeschooling. So I'm super keen to hear what you have learned and what you are putting into practice with your kids now yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, there was a couple of things you said. Creative people absolutely get destroyed by the school system because there's just no expression for them. And so they suffer the most. And then also the other people that suffer the most are people who learn kinesthetically.
Talk to me about kinesthetic, like touching.
Yeah, like they learn
move their bodies.
by doing. Yeah, they learn by doing, not by writing, not by reading.
Yeah.
I actually had a cousin who was in school, and I remember he told us that his physics teacher said to him that he was the stupidest kid in the school. Now, this boy, on the football pitch, he was a genius. There was things he could see that we couldn't see.
Yeah.
And, if you can't teach a fish to climb a tree. And if you keep telling it, you can't climb a tree, you can't climb a tree, you can't climb a tree, and one day it's going to believe you, or maybe I'm incapable.
Stupid fish.
Where, it's the incredible swimmer, and that's where they should have pointed at, and it would have believed in itself.
Yeah, it's, hey, fish, doesn't matter that you can't climb a tree, man. You don't need to climb a tree. Let's jump in the water and see how you go.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, man. You know what's funny? At my school, it was a rugby school, and I, of course, was an outcast because I played what you would call football, soccer, and so that wasn't cool. And we would have these kids. They weren't kids. They were like young men who the school would find them from Fiji, and they'd be these massive Islander fellas. One of them ended up playing rugby I think he played for Australia for a while. He played for the Waratahs for sure. And he comes to school and he's fucking enormous, man. And he's got tattoos, and we're like, this guy's 25 for sure. And so he came on a scholarship, rugby scholarship, and just destroyed everyone. He was purely an import so that our school could get some rugby cred against the bigger the bigger private schools. But he didn't do well in class, and why would he? He's just come over from another country. His English wasn't perfect. He was doing his best, but it was fine. It didn't matter. That didn't matter at all for him because he crushed on the rugby field. So it's like he got a pass. But the other kids who were maybe not so good on the rugby field, maybe were better in something more creative, as you mentioned. And look, it's not like there's no creative outlet. There's definitely art and music in these classes, but it's not a lot. It's not enough, shall we say?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, creativity goes beyond art and music and drama, and for me, creativity is imagination.
Yes.
And that's the other thing that I see missing from children these days. And mainly that's because of school, because we're not pushing their imaginative ability. They're not getting a lot of time to play with other kids where they can come up with imaginative games. And now they're just distracted by screens.
Yeah.
So where are they building their imaginative play ability, which was a huge part of play for I was going to say decades, but probably longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was
thousands of years.
It was kind of forever. You had a stick, you had some stones, you had some wood, you didn't have a universe on a screen here that you could just be like, zoning out of and not having to use an imagination.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that stick could be a fishing rod, it could be a spear, it could be a sword, it could be anything the imagination wants it to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is kind of why I'm against toys as well. Like maybe a bit extreme, but
it's a bold call. But look, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Specifically, toys that can only be played in one way.
Yes.
And when children have such an abundant choice of toys as well, they can just, as soon as they reach a creative block with something, they put it down and pick something else up.
Dude, what's funny, man? The one toy that my daughter and I have gotten the very most use out of is a stack of wooden loops, and there's a red one, and then there's a smaller orange one, and then a smaller yellow one. There's 5 of them. The amount of different things we have done with that toy, that is by far the best thing that we ever got her. We play hide and seek with it. We spin it around. We roll it down the hill. There's like 50 games we play with that thing. And it's all beat up now, and yet we've got these amazing other things that she'll play with for 10 minutes, and then she's done.
Yeah. See, because she's not playing with the toy, she's playing with her imagination.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And that's why I say to parents, have less toys. Have toys that can be played with in multiple ways, and have them play with their imagination, not with the toy. I can't remember what else we were talking about.
Well, I was going to ask you, we were talking about, before you were saying, it sounds like you and I like to go down the rabbit hole in that we have that similar fashion, whereas I do my best to keep one foot in, one foot out. And I'm intrigued by conspiracy theories because, and I've said this before, because guess what? Some of them aren't theories. Some of them are real. So when you find out that some of them are real, it kind of makes you go, okay, well, maybe I need to pay attention and do some critical thinking before I just jump on board with what everyone else is telling me I need to think.
Yeah.
So you were saying earlier that you had learned a lot about how traditional school, let's say, is where you plug into the matrix. It's let's talk about that, and what are some of the more sinister things that you have learned about the traditional schooling system?
Okay, well, a good one to talk about is critical thinking, something you just mentioned there. So a child's ability to do that starts around, it can be earlier, but it starts around age 7.
Mm-hmm.
And they build that ability up until age 11, 12, where it's fully developed.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that, right? Before then, they don't have that ability. So whatever you tell them, they'll just accept it and believe it. So if you,
that's why like Santa Claus starts to get foggy around 10, you know?
That's a good point. But say, for example, they're watching a kid's show and there is a good guy and a bad guy. Now, there isn't really good guys and bad guys in real life for kids.
Yeah.
There's no villains. Whereas when they're watching these shows, they look at that and they assume that's what the real life is like. There's good guys and there's bad guys. And we know it's all grey, really.
Yes, we've all been bad guys, whether we like to admit it or not.
Yeah, we've been good guys and bad guys in different stories, haven't we?
Yeah.
But that's more complex stuff that happens later on. But
well, I'm still trying to deal with that shit now at 38. So yeah.
But for a young kid, they shouldn't be bad guys and then what happens is, because no one's actively being a bad guy to a kid, are they? Unless it's another kid that's bullying them in the playground. But, part of that could be because we're showing them these villain concepts at a young age, and they don't know if it's normal, approved, or unapproved behavior. So they might look at something a villain's done and thought, actually, that was quite funny, without thinking about the consequences of how that negatively impacted someone else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
they don't have the capacity of processing that.
They don't have that capacity. So what's happening now is parents are just leaving the kids alone with these shows, and the kids are now copying that behavior, and they're thinking, where did they learn that?
Sure.
And so then beyond that, so when they actually start to develop critical thinking and get to age 11, 12, school shows them how to do it, right? It tells them this is a critical thinking exercise, but it doesn't develop it because it's a skill. You need to get better at it. You need to keep doing it over and over again. And they don't even start to develop it until they go to university. So it's an exclusively for university degree students. That's when we actually get them to develop critical thinking skills. And the reason I believe they don't do it, one is, the conspiracy theorist one is like they don't want children to have critical thinking skills because children are very blunt, They'll call it out. They have no filter. They have no political filter. If they see some injustice, they'll call it out straight away.
Yeah.
But also, it's, and this is the more kind of practical reason for why they don't teach it, is it's much harder to mark someone's opinion.
Interesting.
So whereas when they keep it just binary, it's just yes or no, they don't need to train the teachers to a high degree.
Yes. And I remember from my personal experience with trying to exercise critical thinking in high school, it was discouraged. Just like that scenario I gave you before, where we were in maths class talking about, hey, I want to play guitar and I have no intention of using Pythagoras' theorem in my life. Why do I have to learn this? Why can I not? Why do I have to be here doing this? That wasn't encouraged, that question. That's a great question, Mark. I was reprimanded for that question. And the same thing happened in religious education in my class, which wasn't religious education. I wasn't being taught about religions. I was being indoctrinated into Christianity because that was what my school was. Now, I'm not trying to shit on Christianity. That's not what I'm doing here. But I wasn't asked about that. That wasn't. I was kind of just pushed into that, whether I liked it or not. So when I asked questions, again, critical questions, I was reprimanded for doing that. I wasn't encouraged for doing that. So let alone being, someone trying to mark me on my critical thinking skills, forget about it. Stop doing that. That's what I got.
Yeah.
Don't ask that question.
Yeah. And then what happens is people learn to become obedient. They not even learn. They're trained to become obedient.
Yeah, you got 12 years of it. Your most formative years.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you look at the history of school, it was actually the concept of school, compulsory schooling, was brought about by the Prussians. Have you heard of the Prussians?
I've heard of it, and I need you to school me on the Prussians, for lack of a better term.
It was sort of this East Germany, in between Russia and Germany, was this society of Prussians, and they were the ones who originally brought it out. And what they observed was, the cyclical peasants' revolt that came about, I don't know, every few decades, when the peasants were upset with tax prices and the rich getting richer. And, they'd all grab their pitchforks and march into the town and demand better.
Not do as they were told.
Yeah, not do what they're told and demand better rights and, hang the landlords or whatever. I'd say not landlords, landowners, we'll call them. And once they started putting their children into school, into the system, that all cut down.
So they invented this system of school?
Yeah. And it was meant to be a very direct, listen to your teacher, training these children through their formative years to essentially do what they're told. And that was adopted by the Americans. I think it was Rockefeller. Rockefeller, and there's more to this, actually, because before school in America, there was this period where they were actually suffering from overproduction. So because, the parents were teaching the children everything, there was much more ingenuity. People were more innovative. People were more entrepreneurial naturally.
Of course.
So, they were producing their own furniture. They were producing their own clothes. They were producing everything, essentially. So they didn't need to rely on these big companies who had factories and could produce this stuff at much a lower quality to sell at a markup. They didn't need this stuff. So, again, this is the conspiracy, that they pushed the compulsory schooling system onto the Americans. They essentially dumbed them down by focusing on these very kind of basic, unrelated knowledge, and they took them away from their parents And over the span of time, they lost that. They lost those abilities.
So I want to do the whole devil's advocate thing and try and let's talk about some of the pro school arguments that people would come up with that are definitely necessary to talk about. You know, people, the biggest one that because that's pretty sinister, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. After the stuff that's just gone down over the last few years, and you know, as soon as you kind of open this trapdoor and look in and start to learn stuff, it's like, like what the two big ones that I have come across, and even asked myself about the why you shouldn't homeschool and why children should go to school is the first one, the biggest one is they won't know how to socialize. So we can talk about that in a second. And the second one, before I forget it, is I can't teach my children. I'm not a teacher. So those are the two main ones that I've always encountered from other people and even myself to an extent. So why don't we talk about those? The socialization, socializing kids. You can't socialize your kids if they don't go to school. They'll be that weird kid with no mates. They won't know how to talk to anyone.
Yeah. I think that's everyone's biggest fear, and
yeah, it's valid. You don't. No one wants that to happen. No one wants their kid to turn out like that.
Yeah, I feel it's a misconception because people have this fear that, you know, if they don't socialize with kids or if they don't form friendships, they won't gain the ability to have good quality relationships. Mm-hmm. And measure if someone's a good person or a bad person when they're an adult. Mm-hmm. Now, I'd argue that children don't learn that best from from other kids. They learn that best, like they learn what the measure of a good quality person and a good quality relationship is from their parent.
What you mean? You mean a child who doesn't know what they're doing isn't a good role model for another child? Yeah, what a wild idea that is.
Yeah, and that's why that's why we don't actually choose our friends for life until we're adults.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah,
because you said it there. We're not. I think children are not good role models to each other. If they don't know,
no, I mean, they don't know what they're doing.
If they don't have good role models themselves.
Yeah, and for starters, they just don't know what they're doing. Like they're learning, and they don't have anyone else's best interests at heart fundamentally, because that's the point of being a child. You know, well, that's not the point, but that's kind of ingrained in being a child. They haven't grown up yet. They're still learning how to grow up.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. The trusting that another child is going to take as good a care of your child as their parent is. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's nonsense. It's not going to happen.
And I think the only reason why homeschoolers get a bad rep for this, mothers in the past who have homeschooled sometimes have done it for the wrong reasons. They've been overprotective.
Okay.
Usually this is like, you know, hardcore.
Devouring mother kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And then when you overmother your child, what happens is you're not treating them how the world is going to treat them.
No, not at all.
So they go out into the world, they get treated, you know, I'd say normally, not harshly. It feels harsher to them.
Yes.
So, and I thought everyone's meant to be as nice as my mum is to me. You know, and obviously be nice to your kids, but like as they get to their teenage years, you need to start being fair with your kids as opposed to nice.
Yes. I think my role as as a father is to equip my daughter with these skills to navigate the world on her own when I'm not there. And that doesn't mean doing everything for her. In fact, it means, I think it means not doing as little as I can for her, showing her how to do things and letting her do things.
Absolutely. That's exactly what you should be doing.
Coming back to the friends thing and the socializing thing, I've always found that the argument that makes sense to come back to, if you homeschool your kids, they won't know how to socialize. You make a valid point that perhaps children can be just fine even if they don't spend as much time around kids as they would at school. But then another point is, and I don't know whether that's true, that I don't have any info on that, but it does. Kids have a great time with adults when they play with them and when they love them and are kind to them and teach them from a positive role model perspective. But another way of looking at it is, if I were to try and pick an ideal scenario to socialize my daughter with other children, it sure as shit doesn't look like what school looks like. Putting her in a classroom behind a bunch of desks where she has to sit still and be quiet and basically do as she's told for however many lessons there are in the day and have too little breaks for a minority of the day where she gets to hang out and run around and play. Yeah. That's not an ideal way to socialize.
No, and she's stuck with people her own age, her own ability, the same people from like the local area that have come into the same spot that she's stuck with. She's stuck in the same friend groups.
Yeah, and also the same enemy groups.
Like, the same enemy groups, yeah.
Let's call it what it is. How many people don't have some kind of trauma from some people bullying them, or trauma from realizing they were a bully, and that they were in a trapped environment in school. They couldn't get away from it because some kid or group of kids were being a jerk to them. Or, as I said before, they're coming to terms with the fact that they were horrible to other kids at school because their dad was horrible to them, or,
Yeah. And that's a big problem with state schooling as well, because your kids are sort of stuck with these kids. You don't know who their parents are, how they treat their kids. And then your kid is just stuck with that kid for years.
Yeah.
Years. And I talk about like bullying and stuff. And I say, look, obviously some level of bullying is, character building, but not in a school environment. A school environment is not, representative of real life. In real life, you can walk away from a situation.
Yes. And you are empowered as an adult to know, okay, I'm going to have to lose this job, but that's my choice, and I can get another job. I can go and do this. I can just leave this environment if it's a work problem, Whereas if you have the critical thinking skills as a kid, which you don't, but even if as a kid you're at school and you're getting bullied and you go, you know what, I want to leave, I want to walk away. You can't unless you have exceptionally understanding and compassionate parents who know what's going on and will take you out of school. A lot of kids are like, you're stuck. You're just imprisoned. I don't know, not to try and be overly dramatic, but they can't do anything.
It is prison, and that's part of the trauma of school, is being forced to go somewhere you don't want to go for decades, much longer than a prison sentence, than like a murder sentence.
Do you think that I don't think it's a completely dark, horrible picture for every child. I think that there are maybe some kids who do really well in the school system, and they enjoy it, and they're happy, and they succeed, and the methods of learning fit perfectly with the way that they retain information, the way that their ability to sit and focus, it just is tailored to them.
Yeah. No, I'm not anti-school. I'm anti the way we've got it set up at the moment. I
Mm.
think school has the potential for a great system,
Mm.
but there just needs to be less of it, much more control over what they're learning, more time spent with a teacher as opposed to getting changed every year, so they can actually build a connection with
Sure.
their mentor,
Sure.
and more time with the family.
Mm.
Now, see, if it was only like 2-3 hours a day, I'd send my kids to school. And
Yes.
they're learning English, maths, to
Yeah,
a level that they need, and then were able to niche down into something that they were interested in, that they had a strength in.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to do this with you, where we talk about what. Well, it's good. Let's just do it now. What in your opinion would an ideal school look like? Can you describe that for me? What does the day look like? What does the classroom look like? What is the curriculum? Is it completely turned on its head? Can you describe that? And does it already exist?
I don't think. Well, what I'm going to suggest is pretty radical. I think it's very telling that we live in a neoliberal capitalist world where everything is privatized apart from education. There's a complete monopoly on education.
That's true. Even at a private school, it's the same curriculum.
Exactly. So what I would like to do is remove that monopoly and have private learning centers.
That's just sunk in for me. That's wild. That's fucking wild, dude. Are we wrong? Are there some schools that are allowed to teach what they want to teach, or does every school have to teach the curriculum? Wow. Wow, that's creepy. That's really creepy.
There are some outliers, but they don't get, any sort of approval from the government at all.
Sure.
There's Steiner models, there's Waldorf models. That's slightly better. There's another model called the Sudbury Valley model, which I'll tell you a little bit about. But I'll just want to finish what I said about the independent learning centres. So, for example, say in Scotland, if your child is 3 to 5, you get 3 hours at a nursery. And because nurseries are private, there's some really good nurseries out there, kindergartens. Like there's one that my daughter went to. It's a woodland outdoor kindergarten. So they're learning in nature. It's incredible. Now, nurseries have got a lot more freedom to pick how they're set up, because people aren't really that concerned. They're not going to get marked or anything like that. So they get sort of free reign until they go to school. So whereas I want a system where it's no school and there's private individual learning centers, and in these learning centers, they're just doing a very niche number of subjects. So there'll be like an English one, there'll be like a maths one, a physics one, and everyone gets issued education tokens that they can go and spend in these learning centers, and they can go immerse themselves in that learning and just like hammer it for 3-6 months, learn it really quickly, get great at it, and then move on to something else.
This is in your ideal model of school? Yeah.
And then essentially what we can produce is teenagers who are ready to go into work at like 13, 14 years old. They've accumulated the skill, they've niched down, and because everyone's got a custom curated education, the value of that education is much higher, because right now everyone's got the same education. So you're leaving school, the only job you can get is McDonald's, and you're overqualified for that.
Sure. Yeah. I can't help but think though that if we get the kids ready to work at 13, 14, more profit.
No, but
Get them in there. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Especially young boys. I believe that's why children are, getting in their teens and they're acting out, because what they really want is authority, but authority doesn't come without responsibility.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And they don't feel, the responsibility of, doing their homework or preparing for tests. It's not enough. They want people to rely on them, people to respect them.
Yes.
Somewhere where they can go earn a wage.
And it's also, it's not intrinsically motivated. If they're doing something that, do your homework, if you don't have an emotional attachment to your homework, finishing your homework is not an achievement. But if you are a young lad who really digs building stuff and your homework is to finish this pool table that you've been working on for 6 months, you'll do it because you want to do it. You'll do it in any spare moment that you have. And then if there's a chance that maybe you can sell it and you can make a few grand for yourself and your family or whatever, well, cool. But that's a very different thing to, now you got to do your algebra. Now you got to work on your physics. Now you got to do this stuff. And, if he doesn't relate to that stuff, there is no responsibility.
Yeah.
Tied to it.
So what you're saying kind of ties into what I'm saying is go to one of these math centers, learn math to a certain level where you can now graduate and go enter a woodworking class and now go develop your woodworking skills. And then, you could gain the ability to do a side hustle. But when I say go to work, I don't mean start doing 40 hours a week from age 13.
Yeah, mining lithium,
But start doing 10 hours, still learn on the side as well, and keep leveling yourself up. Because actually doing the practical work is a much more effective way of learning than doing theory. Yes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, give me someone who's been not trained through learning, in a classroom, but has been on the job over someone who's never been on the job but passes all the tests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we privatize education, what would that do for the economy? That would be incredible. And in a way, it's already happening online with digital courses. So this market, people don't understand. It's just beginning right now. We're just going into a time where it's starting to become normalized that, I did an online course and I learned that.
Yes, that's true. That's maybe one of the benefits that came from all that lockdown stuff with COVID, is that became much more mainstream and accepted.
Yeah. And it's just going to keep going. It's going to keep going because actually if you, instead of going to, someone who's done a maths degree to learn maths, what about, or a science degree to learn science? What if you went to an actual scientist who's worked in the field? They could teach you so much more, and they could teach you the specific knowledge that you need to get that specific job that you want. So the education process is much more direct, concise, and you're not learning a plethora of all these different things so you can go and niche down into one thing. It's more efficient, time efficient, cost efficient.
Yes. Yeah.
So I feel that this digital course industry is just going to go. It's just going to keep going.
Yeah. Well, that leads into the other skepticism that I was talking about that people have of why you shouldn't pick homeschooling over regular schooling, is because I don't, as a parent, I don't have the ability to teach my children. I'm not a teacher.
Yeah.
But this is, well, yeah. Can you elaborate on that? What do you think about that argument, that response?
Well, I don't believe that should be an excuse for anyone, because everyone knows how to read and write. Therefore, they could teach their kid how to read and write. and everyone knows basic arithmetic. Therefore, they can teach their child how to do basic arithmetic.
Mm-hmm.
If you know how to do something, you could probably teach it. Or, with a small amount of guidance, you could eventually teach it quite easily. Once you have those two, your child has the ability to self-teach.
Right. So that's a big one, because that's the one that I don't think I don't think that a lot of people even get that. I don't think they believe that. But I mean, when you really think about it, there's all this stuff at school that I didn't learn, and I spent all these hours, coming back to the math thing, I can't tell you anything about that stuff that I spent hours and hours and hours forcing myself to figure out how to do. As soon as I left, it just disappeared. I've just forgotten it. It's gone.
Yeah.
Whereas now as an adult, there are quite a few things that I have learned because I'm interested in it. Like, I've taught myself how to produce music using Logic from start to finish. I can write and record and produce an entire song to a professional standard.
You probably need to do 3 degrees to learn how to use Logic.
Yeah,
it's so
exactly.
extensive.
Yeah, and I've just figured it out, and I edit and I produce this entire podcast completely on my own. I do a vast majority of the production of my wife's podcast. All this stuff. Like I do it because I love doing it. I'm interested in doing it. I have taught myself, and that's how you actually learn, by wanting to do something. It's not really learning if you are being told you have to regurgitate this. Because you can figure out how to do it, how to regurgitate the thing, and maybe there will be some people who are better at regurgitating than others. But is that learning? If you don't retain it, if you aren't interested in it, is that really learning? I don't think it is.
Once you get it done, you forget it instantly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do it all the time. I still do some acting stuff, and I learn these auditions, and honestly, later that day, if you ask me to recite the script, I've forgotten most of it. It's gone. It's not something that I need to know, and I've learned it because that's what the audition requires, but it's gone. It's not, I didn't write it. It's not, it hasn't come from me. Yeah. It's,
and that's the important role passion plays in education, because when you're passionate about something, you're emotional about it. And when you attach emotion to something, it's always a stronger memory.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
like
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, a positive emotion to something, you'll remember that. That would be a strong memory for you. Whereas when it's a negative emotion, you'll instantly forget it, because it'll just be so unimportant.
Yes. There's no responsibility. There's no desire. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's right. You were talking about once you can, read and write and do basic arithmetic, you can empower your child to teach themselves.
Exactly. So we want to start building that ability. It's fine if you start like at age 9, when they're sort of halfway through their critical thinking ability starting to kind of ramp up. And up until that age, the sort of stuff you're doing with them is just, the sitting reading with them. That's in the beginning, my kids didn't like reading. I was sort of just like forcing them to do it, but not a lot, maybe 20 minutes a day. But now they're at a point where, they'll sit and happily read their comics for hours. So it was worth it. But the forced learning, we'll call it, takes up a very small part of the day. 20, 30, 40 minutes max. Then the most of the time, what you want to nurture is their ability to play.
Okay. Yeah. Talk to me more about this, because I've heard so much about how real learning learning is play, especially for little kids. That's because, and it makes sense because, again, why are they playing? Because it's fun, because they like it. And if they stick at it, they're learning things. Passion. Yeah.
Passion, emotion, all of that goes into play. And the other ability they are developing with that is creativity and imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And creativity is like, the way I describe it to people is, so it's essential because knowledge is having the pieces. Intelligence is knowing where they go, and creativity is how you put them together.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I like that.
So creativity goes into everything. It goes into, science research studies. For example, if you were trying to conduct a research study, how you would structure that takes someone with a creative ability to think outside of the box. And essentially, we'll call it thinking outside of the box, that ability. And they learn that and they nurture that through play. So that's why play is a big part of the curriculum, essentially. And if you think back to all of your fondest memories, they were playing with your mates.
Yeah.
So we want them to feel like they had a really happy, amazing childhood where they got to play a lot. And because that better prepares them for adulthood. It doesn't feel like, whereas now I feel with teenagers, especially at like 18, even older kids at 18, 19-year-olds, because we suppressed their ability to play, they're much more immature. Whereas if we let them like really get into it, like essentially get bored of doing it. I'm done with playing mum. I'm done with playing dad. I want to go to work now. I want to build something serious.
Totally. I want to have something with a slight achievement in it. It makes so much sense. When I think about the things that I'm the most proud of, as far as things that I've achieved, aside from, my family, it's things like when I've been in bands and the music that I have made that has required a lot of work. But even the word that we use, what are we doing? We're playing music. You play music, we're playing. You get together with the guys, and or gals, and you jam out and you have a good time but you create something.
Yeah.
I mean, look, and again, that's me. I'm a creative person. That's kind of what I have always done. But even and writing, I wrote a movie script, and It's been it's been the hardest, the biggest body of work that I've ever made, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of and completely unpaid. There's no money in it until it gets made, and even then you got to hope that it makes some money. But getting it made is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But the amount of hours that I have sunk into this story, it's huge amount of work, and you couldn't stop me from doing it. When I was compelled by the story, I needed to get this thing out. I was like, man, I need to go and eat. I haven't eaten today. I've been sitting here working on this story, and I'm not that kind of guy. I love a feed, So you find the right thing. You're totally right. It actually is play.
So you've nurtured this creative ability through playing in a band, and now you are sort of directing it into creative writing.
Yes,
essentially, which is kind of similar to what I've done. I've nurtured the ability to, play music, DJ, whatever, music production, and now I'm nurturing it into creative writing because most of my content is scripted. Because I work really hard at it and try and make it flow really well, and I value my audience. I don't like to waffle too much in it, and that's us like sort of expressing creativity in a way that's not, people don't really associate that with creativity, writing things down on paper.
Yes. But
So
yeah.
Basically, we want our children to play for as long as possible. So when they get to age 9, that's when we sort of set them on projects to go learn about things or to go pursue the things that they're interested in. And what we want to do when they sort of get to 11, 12 is focus on skills that can essentially make money.
Sure.
So
Support
whether
themselves
that's,
in the world.
woodworking, whether that's, video editing, because you've got the freedom and you can look at the world and see, right, what does the world need? What does the market need right now? And you're not held down by this bureaucracy of, we need to do this curriculum, we need to go into that degree. Are there going to be even jobs left in that field by the time I finish that degree? Because you're doing it for 4 years, you're spending all of that money on it.
Am I going to want to do it for that long? Like, how many people do you know they start a degree and they get a year and a half in, they're like, I hate this. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And then they've got this horrible debt, and that's a whole different problem.
Yeah, so you've got much more fluidity in terms of what skills you want to build. And then we try and get them into work as soon as possible so they can start to feel that responsibility, gain that authority over their life. If your kid was helping you with the bills, you'd be like, do what you want.
Yeah, well, and isn't that interesting? Because if they're working, but if they're doing something that they love doing, then brilliant. Like if they're, they're going to work or not even going, or whatever it is that they're doing that is work, that is earning them money, and they love it. That's awesome. I mean, this is the world we live in. You got to make money. You've got to survive. I mean, maybe you can live off the land. Cool. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe that's what your kid wants to do. They want to live in a commune,
self-sustainable.
Yeah. Cool. Like if they love it and they can do it, brilliant. Yeah. Wow. It's a real paradigm shift, and I've already learned a lot of this stuff. And it's kind of rocking me. So this is definitely going to confuse and upset some people, because it's hard to grasp something that is so foreign and on its head.
Yeah. Except that it's not foreign. Except that that's the way we were for thousands of years, up until the school system was established 150, 200 years ago.
Yeah. So something I'm really intrigued by. Can you walk me through what a typical homeschool day looks like for you?
Yeah, I'm really easy. So what we'll do is, I've got 3 kids.
Okay.
So I've got a 8-year-old boy, a 6-year-old girl, and a 4-year-old girl.
Okay.
Now, we'll get up in the morning and the kids will do some reading.
Do you get them out of bed? Like, do you have a wake-up time?
They get up when they want. They get up like 8.
Okay, already. That's okay. So that's different.
Yeah,
when they can sleep. If they're tired, they sleep.
No, usually they get up and they come to bed with me. We cuddle, we talk in the morning. Yeah. And we get up. I give them their breakfast, and then they'll do some reading. Like, for example, say the weather's not great outside, which is often it's not in Scotland, and so they'll want to maybe get on their devices. Okay, so they want to play some Minecraft. I'll be okay. That's fine. You want to play some Minecraft? That's cool. Mm-hmm. Do this, which is some sort of mental task right now at the moment, is reading. then it's do something physical. So we sometimes do boxing drills. I do pad work with them, or they'll do like some burpees and squats or push-ups.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been doing this for a while now, so they can get pretty high numbers. It's not unusual that they'll do 100, 155 burpees, and that will sort of unlock their screen time.
And just quietly between us, kind of helps to gas them out a little bit to maybe take a little bit of the heat off you.
Their energy is endless.
Well, you're creating machines now. They're just too powerful. So, yes, that's completely backfired.
It's completely backfired. My 6-year-old did 600 burpees in a day once.
Oh, my God. That cardio, man.
She did 200 in the morning, 200 in the afternoon, and 200 in the evening. And I was completely shocked. She wanted a new game for a Nintendo, and she was like, how can I get it? I was like, well, you need to do something, that's going to blow us away.
Yeah, wow.
If you want to unlock it like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that was what she agreed, and that's what she did. But I find doing the physical stuff, the physical exercise and whatnot, obviously it builds cardio, it builds strength, but it also counters the harm of these sedentary behavior of screen time, because they're just sitting for ages. Plus, the other thing they typically do after they do their exercise is they'll go and do their chores. They'll go clean their room.
Okay.
And that was another big paradigm shift for me as well, because I used to really struggle with getting them to clean their room, like tidy up their toys and whatnot. I'd say to them, okay, go tidy up your toys, and then I'll let you watch the TV. And they'd go and they'd like sit there and they're like kind of half playing and don't want to do this. I hate it. And you won't believe this, but it's actually easier for me to get my kids to do 100 burpees, then tidy their room, than to just tidy their room. And the way that works is when they get used to doing a physical exercise in the home, it builds up this tolerance for effort. So
yes.
Yeah. So tidying the room afterwards,
and a tolerance for hard work and things that are challenging too. That's the nature of going to the gym anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tidying the room feels easy compared to that.
Yes.
So that was one of the things that I kind of built into them, and then they'll tidy the room, and then they'll play their Minecraft for an hour. Then they come off. Then we'll probably go out. Grab a coffee or something, because we're out in the world. We can do what we want,
Yeah.
There's no kids around. We really play it by ear. There's no fixed schedule. Maybe we'll go out to some like a trampoline park or something, or maybe we'll go to. They'll go meet their friends, or the other homeschoolers. My son, he goes to forest school on a Friday. So I kind of drop him off there, and then I have some like one-on-one time with my middle daughter. She's a bit more sensitive; she needs that. But really, the education part, an hour a day at most.
Yeah, right. And so, what does that look like? How are they learning? How are you guiding them with that?
So,
what's that look like?
We're just focusing on, like I said, reading and mental arithmetic. And mental arithmetic, we just do like in the car, or like when we're waiting for food or waiting for something. It's just like learning a language.
Sure. And the girls are 4 and 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 4-year-old, not so much. If you ask, the other day I asked her to count to 20, and she goes, 1, 2, 3, element of P. Which I thought was hilarious. But, parents put this huge focus on, I want them to learn as much as they can from a young age. And honestly, does it really impact their life? all they want to do is play.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. The what is actually age appropriate for them to be doing and learning, because, for instance, our little girl is we're working on toilet training her now. We have been for a little while. We're not going too crazy with it. We're not, but she's getting there. She's and there's part of me that kind of thinks, oh, she's 2.5. Oh, I wish she was already completely toilet trained, perfectly toilet trained. But she's 2.5. She doesn't need to be. She's okay. If she were 7, then that would be an issue. But it's not a problem right now. She's, what is appropriate for her age and for her stage of life is that it's okay for her to be wearing nappies, and when she's not, when we put her in undies and we tell her, you got to go to the toilet now because you don't have your nappy on, you make sure you go to the potty, and she doesn't do it, and she goes outside and she wheezes on the concrete and thinks it's hilarious. And it's okay. She's 2.5.
Yeah.
So but it would be, there's a little part of me that thinks, oh no, it's not good, but it's fine. It's not a problem yet. There's a time when that's a problem, but that's not now. That's not at 2.5. Yeah. And I guess it's the same kind of thing. Like a 4-year-old, why does she need to count to 20? Why? She doesn't. She's 4.
She doesn't.
She's got there's no requirement for her to have to count to 20. If she can, cool. But she doesn't need to.
Absolutely. And that's coming from, where we tried with our son to make sure he learned stuff. His mom, she got at 1.5, he could tell you the difference between a pentagon and a hexagon.
Wow.
And it was super impressive, and it was super cute, when we were pointing out what's this, and he'd say it. But did it make a difference to his life? No, it didn't. It wasn't ever going to come up. And there's a lot of things like that. So for me, like up until like 4 or 5 years old, the main thing I want her to learn is emotional regulation.
There you go. That's a great thing to be focusing on for a child.
Self-regulation, which is like keeping themselves entertained, and emotional regulation. I'd say those are the biggest focuses up until age 5. Then from 5 on,
I know a bunch of people in there that have never learned that. In their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that have never learned emotional regulation. That's that's a tough one.
Yeah. It's getting worse and worse. The emotional immaturity of people is crazy, and we've got school and screens to thank for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's really interesting that your day is you have the learning. Okay, so your son is 7, 8?
8.
What's his what does his learning day look like?
So at the moment, there's only really 3 things that we do. We do reading, we do the mental arithmetic, like learning a language, and we do boxing. Those are the 3 things. Right. And the boxing is more for, sometimes they don't always enjoy doing it. Often they don't enjoy doing it, but for me, it's like the only reason why it's more important for the boy. I think it obviously helps with their confidence and self-esteem once they know they can defend themselves. But with my daughter, she's not really going to need it. And the reason why I'm teaching her is because I know how to do it, and I know how to teach it, and I would rather teach her that if she applied herself at something consistently over 2-3 years, she can become amazing at it.
Sure.
And then she can take that mindset. It's a kind of the old learning to learn.
Learning to learn thing, right? My math teacher was saying.
But this
The
is
difference
more
is boxing is good for you, whereas Pythagoras theorem, I don't know if it's really good for you. It's not. It doesn't build cardio.
well, it's more learning to become competent.
Sure.
So it's learning competency.
Yep.
If you can learn that, then if you want to go and do gymnastics or ballet or dance, then
Yeah,
an hour a day.
I think you're kind of underselling it, dude. I actually think that she really does need to know how to box and do that stuff. Like, I'm going to get my daughter into jiu-jitsu as soon as I can, just because, you know what some guys can be like with no impulse control, and I don't want her to have to be afraid. I want her to be able to go, if I need to, I can hurt you. I think that's important, and I think it's a great thing to teach a girl. I think all girls should know how to defend themselves. Unfortunately, I wish they didn't have to, but I think that they do.
Well, as a father, you want to have that safety of mind, don't you? If she gets in a situation, she knows.
Yeah,
but also teach them how to run.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, she's got the cardio, so she can hopefully get a good left hook on the jaw, and if that doesn't drop him, just get out of there. She can do her burpees. Yeah. Okay. So is your son at 8 starting to show particular interest in things specifically?
Yeah, he is actually, and I think the place that we're moving into soon is more STEM sort of programming.
Sure.
He's really into Minecraft, and I really want to introduce like educational frameworks that he can use within Minecraft, that are sort of translatable into kind of STEM projects that we can do with him in the home. So I'm getting into them more because he's got an engineer's mind.
Interesting.
And he also loves birds for some reason as well. So a weird combination, but again, it's more about him building an ability, and he loves music. Like I let him play the GarageBand app on his iPad. And he loves that, and that's my opinion on devices as well. There's high stimulation content, and then there's like no stimulation content. Like learning GarageBand on the iPad is not going to release the same chemicals that watching Paw Patrol on the iPad is. So we'll have days where it's like we'll have some no screen days, but we'll also have no stimulation days where you're free to go use your devices, but it's only for if you want to create funny videos, if you're recording each other,
sure,
that's cool.
Sure.
You want to
You've
play
got to
chess
use it creatively. You can't just zone out.
Exactly. You can play chess on it. You can play GarageBand on it.
Yeah.
So we have some different rules around screen time as well. But the thing I want to get into next is programming.
Yeah.
So there's a few
the way the world's going, man.
There's a few products that I'm speaking to right now, and we're going to get those in, and we're going to start using them, and hopefully I'll be able to show some other parents how to use them as well.
Yeah, cool. I'd love to chat with you about the content that you're putting up on your Instagram and that just talking about stimulating and overstimulating content that kids consume. So I love your system that you have for reviewing these kids shows. It's pretty hard to rationally argue against, and I think that's why your channel and your page is really gaining so much traction, because it's a solid review that you do. Did you just figure that? Have you just figured that stuff out yourself, or how have you come up with this?
Yeah, so part of it is obviously audio production background. You know yourself how you make a piece of music interesting and keep the listeners' attention. But that sort of translated into doing the therapy program. So then we kind of learned how to make relaxation programs.
Yes.
You know, if you play like just 10 hertz frequency for a minute, people's brains just switch off. They just stop hearing it. So you need to keep some fluidity in it to keep it interesting, but not too much where it, over stimulates them. So I had that knowledge from doing that. And then more recently, I started creating short form content. And maybe a year ago, like half a year ago, we were using these techniques to try and keep the viewer's attention, because in the short form content, well, people's attentions are like, the average is 2-3 seconds. And you know yourself, if someone comes onto your reel, you've got 2-3 seconds to keep their attention, otherwise they're gone. So that's the average across the board. So we were using these techniques to kind of like make the channel make the reel interesting. But that sort of gone the other way. I'll talk about that in a second. But then, so I understood how you do that. But then when I started looking back at the children's content, I was like, well, these guys are already doing that, but they're doing it like 5x. It's even more so than we're doing
for kids.
You know, who don't have the ability to say, no, that's enough. I'm just going to turn that off now.
Yeah.
So the other thing that's not happened recently, part of the reason that I stopped doing it was because it was really hypocritical.
Sure.
But
good
the
for
other
you for observing that and acknowledging that, man. Like you go down that path and you realized maybe there's damage that's being done by kind of hacking people's minds.
Yeah, and I've really listened to my audience on that one as well. People have said to me that this is overstimulating, that's overstimulating, and I've like tried to make it as less stimulating as possible. But also, I don't know what I was going to say.
Well, we were talking about the little system that you have created for reviewing.
Yeah. So then when I started looking at kids' content through the lens of a short form content creator, I started to notice it even more. And then one day I was like, okay, right, I'm just going to take a minute clip and I'm going to analyze it. And you had to watch it like several times to pick up everything.
Sure.
First, we're just going to count the sound effects. All right, now we're going to count how long the music, how much they use and how often the jingles come in. Then we're going to count the scene changes. All right, let's measure how stimulating the colors and the artwork are. And I started adding all of these things up, and it gave you a completely different view of children's content once you looked at the raw data that we're presenting, and shows like Octonauts, which was generally considered by a lot of people as a safe show. Like, this wasn't that stimulating. This was a good one to watch for children. When we looked at the raw numbers of it, it was almost as bad as Paw Patrol.
And Paw Patrol's bad.
Oh, Paw Patrol's like one of the worst.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What? Okay, so let's talk about that. What are some of the worst shows for kids to watch?
Stuff that my kids loved, to be honest. Before
well, that's why they love it. It's drugs, basically.
It's digital drugs, yeah. So
yeah.
Blaze and the Monster Machines was really bad. Paw Patrol was really bad, and Cocomelon.
Cocomelon, fuck.
No, Cocomelon is especially bad because it's aimed at younger kids.
Yeah. We got to get rid of Cocomelon. That's so okay. So can you describe for me why something like Cocomelon or Paw Patrol specifically is bad? It's because it's just overstimulating. There's too much going on in all aspects, right?
Yeah, because it's more than just dopamine. it's like a chemical concoction it releases depending on the technique they use. So, for example, say like you see quick animations, a quick movement, that releases testosterone. And then it can make kids really, especially young boys, it can make them hyperactive afterwards, so overstimulate them that way. Whereas like super bright colors in cocomelon, for example, that creates an element of dopamine because, we'd see bright colored fruit or something in nature or something attractive, but also cortisol as well. And the way I explain this to people is like, they're like, how do you know it releases cortisol? Well, if it didn't, go paint your walls these colors. Are you going to paint your walls these colors? No, because very on a marginal level, it's going to give you a bit of anxiety or make you feel a little bit, tiny bit uneasy.
Well, here's an even, that's a great example, but I think here's an even better one. I don't know about you, man, but every time I go to the mall and walk around under those mall lights or like the supermarket, under the supermarket lights, I think it's pretty common for people to be like, I don't feel good. Like it's like, it just kind of drains you. I feel kind of sick after long enough. Sometimes it's all right, but it's pretty common for people like I don't feel good.
I get that in the supermarket.
Yeah.
Doing the shopping. Yep. If I'm in there for longer than an hour and a half, my head is fried. I need to leave.
Yeah. And it's super bright, fluorescent white, blue light so that you can see everything and it's all tantalizing. And
yeah. And yes, the branding on all of the products as well.
Yeah.
And the sheer choice, the volume of it.
Yeah.
So, you're not going to paint your walls these colors, but you've got them on a 50-inch screen.
Yes, moving and bouncing all over the place. Yeah, wow. Okay, so let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What are some of the best shows in your opinion for a kid to watch?
Yeah, so there's some great ones out there. There's an Australian one, Bluey.
Yeah, I'm glad Bluey gets a thumbs up.
Yeah, it's not the lowest stimulation. I'd say it's sort of medium. Because they do have like some really kind of high energy sections in it. But
it's not consistent though. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I love about it, obviously it's 2D art. The palette is not that crazy. But it's very real, relatable stories. Yes. And actually parents can learn something from it as well because it's all based around imaginative play.
Yes. It's funny after watching a few of your Instagram videos, I feel like you've armed me with the skills to really assess these kids shows in an amateur fashion, and yeah, it's actually pretty easy to watch something and go, yeah, this is too much or this is good. Like one of the ones that my wife found one from when she was a kid called Into the Night Garden.
Oh yeah.
Which is, and it's so weird, but you can just immediately tell this show's fine. It's these goofy little characters and there's barely any scene changes and it's real life. It's not super bright, like it's real life as in it's not real life, but it's people in suits.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't think it's not animated and it's.
Yeah, yes. Realistic likeness, realistic pace.
Yes, exactly. And I know, and there's another great one on Netflix, Trash Truck. How does Trash Truck score in your?
Yeah, that's on our approved list.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So I'm on the money. Like I know that there shows that after learning what you have inadvertently taught me, that are good shows when I can put my daughter in front of them and sooner or later she's going to get up and go and do something else. And maybe she'll come back to it. But yeah, with Cocomelon, she's glued, man.
Yeah.
She's glued.
Yeah, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to retain viewer attention because it ups their watch time. And that's all they care about. That's the only thing they care about. They don't care about your child's development. They care about watch time. And we really need to create a new culture for kids' TV where there's gaps where their mind can go and think of something else. It's not like being constantly alerted, where hyper-focused.
There's some shows, like there's an Aussie show. There's the American one, Miss Rachel, which is pretty huge. There's an Aussie chick named Miss Moni who is doing a very similar kind of thing, but it's educational. I look at that and go, I don't know if you've seen it, but I look at that and go, colours are too bright. You've taught me that much.
Yeah.
But the content in itself is pretty slow. Quite often it's just one shot on her and she's talking and she's teaching. It's kind of like a teacher. Now, I feel like I'd like to be teaching my child, but it's definitely better than something like Octonauts.
Yeah.
This is definitely a better alternative.
I mean, someone actually requested that one for me to look into it. And I did a Miss Rachel review. It didn't come off that well, but there was I reviewed her new stuff, and in her new stuff, she has leaned into all of these sound effects and animations and stuff, and it's just it's become too much. But someone said to me, "Go watch her old stuff," and it was like much less production, but it was just her in a room, one shot. Teaching on a whiteboard, which is ideal because you think about it, right? If you are setting the benchmark, okay, this is how education gets taught. You're setting the benchmark to your kid. And then what happens when you're teaching them? Well, now you're not stimulating enough. Whereas if they're watching a piece of content and it's more representative of how you would be, how they would get real life person learning in the real world, then that's okay.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, man, it's like, did you ever see that? I can't remember what it's called. There's a documentary on Netflix about. It's called The Social Experiment. It's about social media and how, is that what it's called? Social Experiment?
Yeah.
The one,
I know which one you're talking about. It was
and it's tracking our eyes and it's just basically everything is about hacking our minds and how the social media companies hired, like TikTok and those companies hired the same people that they use to build pokey machines to make them hyper engaging, so that essentially, we're being hacked. And that, I don't know why we naively would think that our kids would be spared. I guess we're just thinking that you wouldn't do that to kids though, right? But of course they would. If you can make money, they don't care.
The attention economy.
Yeah.
The attention economy. We are the product now. And attention is the currency. And your children are fair game.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's up to us, isn't it, as parents to make informed decisions on what they are and they are consuming.
And that's what they can do to us. They'll turn around and say, well, we didn't tell you to watch our show for 2 hours a day.
That's right.
The parents' fault.
That's right.
All right, but who's delivering the training to the parents?
Yeah.
No one.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody. Exactly. Because the training is the Achilles heel. If they really don't want you to be trained in what they're doing, because then you might find out, hey, maybe this isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's wild. Look, dude, I think that you may have blown my mind enough for one day. Thanks, Haseeb, thank you, brother. This has been a deep and meaningful. I really appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks. And I've got a lot to think about. I got to listen to this podcast back with my wife, and there's a lot of uncomfortable truths in here and in what you're doing and sharing. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to try and it's hard to go against the grain. You know, the homeschooling, the whole idea of homeschooling just has this bad rap, but it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. If you want I want what's best for my daughter, then I feel like there are a lot of things to do with homeschooling that when the problems come up, like the socializing thing, for instance, I can socialize her outside of, you know, as you said, what are you doing through the day? Well, we go and have coffee and we go and meet up with the other homeschooling groups, and like you could fill your whole week with extracurricular activities. She could do a kids boxing class on one day. She could go to a gymnastics class on Tuesday. She could go to swimming on Wednesday. You know, there's a whole bunch of ways you can socialize your kid outside of school.
Yeah.
It's these holes can be filled.
Absolutely. And the thing you forget with school is they really only have lunchtime to have high quality socializing.
Yeah.
That's like 45 minutes a day. So that's what? Less than 5 hours a week.
Yeah.
But you could make up for that in one 5-hour meeting with other homeschoolers.
You know, yeah. Yeah. Actually, you know what? You've just realized, I've just remembered something that I wanted to talk to you about. Do you know much about the schooling systems that they're doing it's in Scandinavia somewhere? And it sounds a lot more like what you were describing. I think they're doing less days of the week. I think it's only a 4 or maybe even 3-day school week. The day itself is shorter and lunchtime goes for 2 hours. And there's the type of learning that they're doing is once they get past, they teach them basic reading, writing, mathematics. But once they've learned that, it's like they have essentially a tablet that has all these curriculum on it, all this learning stuff, and they just give it to the kids and go nuts. If you have any questions about what you want to explore, we will be here to help you. And the kids just discover what they want to discover and learn what they want to learn.
I've not heard of that one, but it sounds amazing.
It sounds dead on, right? It sounds kind of like what you were describing. And
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
directing their own learning.
Yeah.
Applying passion behind it.
Yeah. I think it's in Scandinavia somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll do some more research and see if I can find what it is and see maybe I've made it up. Maybe it's just an imaginary dream.
There is something called the Sudbury Valley model, which is more common in America, and essentially it's like a big home where kids can get dropped off and picked up whenever they want. And they've got different rooms. There's like a reading room. There's a technology room. And most of the kids just play. But for example, they've got a PlayStation in the technology room. And they say to the kids, if you want, you can play PlayStation all day. They give them the option. But children, what they find much more entertaining than playing PlayStation is playing with their friends.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. So they would, if you give them the option, they won't take it. They'll naturally choose playing with their friends. There's a nature setting, and then there's facilitators on hand. There's no teachers, facilitators. It's like, you have a question, you want me to help you something, set something up for you, give you more information on it. That's what the facilitator's job is. And that's what it sounds like the Scandinavia schools got the same setup.
What's this one called that you're talking about?
Sudbury Valley.
And it's in the States?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it's franchised. I don't know. There might be some in Australia. It's worth checking out.
Yeah.
I'll send you the name of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. I got another rabbit hole to really go down and try and figure out. Like we've got a little bit of time, but yeah. Awesome, man. This has been great. Where can people find you? Where should I send them?
So I'm mainly on Instagram at uschooler. We've also got a website, screentimeadvice.com. We are just about to launch a paid community. It's going to be like really cheap for the first couple thousand members. And inside it, we are going to build programs that parents can use to build attachment through screens with their children. And we are giving them more information on how to train an ability to manage emotional regulation, build creativity, build imagination around screen time. And we've got like a 65 lesson course on there that they'll also have access to. And we are going to give parents guides on how to teach their children or supplement their learning, because we mainly focus on parent to child learning over educational content.
Mm-hmm. Great, man. Love it. Awesome, dude. Thank you so much. Haseeb, this has been great.
Thanks for having me.